Coming up next on Tech News Today, Apple is integrating its smarts into iOS with a light touch to begin with. Also, Uber throws surge pricing to the curb. See what I did there? The federal anti-SLAPP bill is here to save Yelp reviewers from all over the world. Well, at least the U.S. anyways. The secret to anti-nausea in VR may be tunnel vision, and AI might soon become your therapist. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1542, recorded Friday, June 24th, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Atlassian. Unleash your team's potential with collaborative software tools like HipChat and Jira, which will enable you to work and communicate better together. Visit Atlassian.com to learn more.
And by Tracker, a coin-sized tracking device that pairs with your smartphone and keeps you from losing your most valued possessions. Visit thetracker.com right now and enter promo code TNT for 30% off your entire order. Welcome to Tech News Today, the show where we give you enough technology news so you can look really smart at cocktail parties. I'm Megan Morrone.
Only cocktail parties, though. Other parties, oof, not nearly smart enough. I'm Jason Howell. How's it going, Megan?
It's going good. You have some good news. You're back in your accounts.
I feel normal now. It's weird. It's really weird. This whole experience has been very strange, being locked out of my Google account time and time again, making lots of tough realizations about how when your information's in the cloud, you don't actually own it, which you've heard time and time again, right? But once you lose it, you realize just how true that is. Mm-hmm. Having all that stuff up there and you can't get to it because it's not actually on your drive. Somebody along the way, which people that were helping out and everything, everybody was so fantastic. Tons of words of support from fans of this show and the other shows that we do and everything on Twitter and all over the place. So it was awesome. Well, one person along the way said, we have a saying for when data's in the cloud, that it's not actually in the cloud, that it's on somebody else's computer. And I'm like, that's it right there. So
the cloud is a total euphemism.
Yes.
To make us feel like, oh, it's just out there in the cloud.
Yep. Nope. It's just hanging out on somebody else's computer, all of your data. So that's the way it goes.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, watch This Week in Google, which Jason hosted, or check his Twitter at Jason Howell and get the whole story.
Yeah. Two-factor authentication. That's what it's all about.
Let's get started with today's news. Aina Fried has a few more details on Apple's new differential privacy in iOS 10. We talked a little bit about this new feature that Apple hopes will make iOS as good as Android at predicting your every need. Fried calls differential privacy, quote, Apple's way of collecting your data without being creepy, end quote. And she says it will be opt-in. So if you don't want Apple to collect your information, even in this non-creepy way, they won't. They will work to do this predictive work. They will continue to do this predictive work on your device, looking through your mail and messages for the information that you might need. They've already begun to do some of that in iOS 9. Apple hasn't said exactly what data they'll be using if you do opt in, but they did reveal that they will not be using your photos in iCloud to power image recognition, which I presume Google Photos does. So there are four specific use cases: new words that you add to your local dictionaries, emoji that you type, deep links inside apps, and a lookup hints within notes. Those are the things that are going to benefit from differential privacy.
Feels a little light in comparison with kind of some of the other like baked-in AI at the system level, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the fact that Apple's even doing this at all is a big change from what Apple has done. So maybe this is the beginning of something, and over time it gets broadened out if need be. But something, some context is better than no context. So I don't think it's bad to be so locked down and isolated. If that gives Apple, what it needs to make iOS a little bit smarter, I suppose, in these ways, then that's better than not.
I mean, I think your consent will be required. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm worried that it's going to not be good enough in either way. Like, I'll make the analogy. Do you ever feel like, as a parent, sometimes you're, like, as a working parent, sometimes you're not working, like your work is suffering and your parenting is suffering, like you can't do either? That's what I see this as. Like, it's going to not be private enough for some people and not be useful enough for other people. And they're just going to say, like, well, I'll just go to Android. Like, it's private enough and super useful to me.
Is this, I mean, do you think this is the kind of thing that would that somebody might decide to swap over? Like, are you pretty sad that it isn't more open? Because that could backfire. And, if Apple is seen as the platform that doesn't analyze every single thing you do, just because they can, because you've opted in for it, that could be seen as kind of a benefit to a lot of people on the platform itself.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I think I'm definitely going to use Allo when it comes out, the messaging, and use it with anyone else who's using it. And it remains to be seen how many people will use it. But, I like when Google picks out my, flight information and hands it to me. I like those useful things.
Sure.
I don't like when Siri is not helpful at all because she has no context.
Yeah, I wonder if the analysis will end up being how many people are opting in on this, because that gives you some sort of a sense of who of your users are actually open to this sort of thing. And if it's a resounding, wow, almost everybody is signing up for this stuff, that's a signal to Apple to maybe be like, okay, well, people are okay with it. Like, it's always finding that balance of what kind of benefit are you getting from handing over this information. And the way Apple's doing it here, it's not quite as blatant of handing over information as it is on some of the other platforms. But maybe that'll be a signal, an indication to Apple to open it up, and it'll get better over time. That's my positive thinking for that one.
Well, wow, this is interesting.
I know. See?
We were kind of taking the opposite. You're pro Apple, and I am pro Android. What's
going on here? Uber announced last night that its riders won't be responsible for doing math anymore.
Whew.
At least not when it comes to hailing an Uber somewhere. Dynamic pricing, also known as surge pricing, they renamed it dynamic, but nobody ever called it that, would kick in during times of heavy demand, and riders were presented with a per minute charge along with a multiplier, something like 1.5 times the normal fare, for example. Riders would then have to punch it into their pocket algorithm device, also known as a calculator, to figure out what they might be spending for the ride. Uber is now testing a version of the app that eliminates any mention of surge pricing, and in its place, an upfront fare is presented. So none of this math. You're just given a fare. The feature is expected to roll out to everyone in the next few months. Uber actually says no math, no surprises. That's true. I would want to know this. Like, I don't use Uber very much, and obviously when we were in Vegas, that was like my Uber and Lyft kind of first rides and everything like that. And I don't remember that being complicated then, but I guess maybe it wasn't surge pricing then, and I just didn't see it.
Well, also when you're on an expense account and you have to get
you're just
somewhere,
not paying attention. You're just like, yeah,
really
come get me
about it.
That's true.
I think that they count on that a lot. I mean, I think that Uber was first. It first started with people who didn't really care how much anything costs. They were going to hire a car anyway, and then we got this idea, which is true, that it's mostly cheaper for the rider. But we just trusted it. And they did use an algorithm, and they would say that surge pricing was good for everyone. That was basically what they were saying. You get more drivers out there. You don't have to wait as long. But they've gotten in a little bit of trouble. It reeks of price gouging, and that really upsets people. They think, oh, well, you're taking advantage of me because I'm calling at 2 a.m. in a place that has a lot of bars, and it's not fair, it's not right.
Sure.
The head of economic research at Uber did a podcast that he went on the Hidden Brain podcast, just talking about. It's a great podcast if you have never listened to it. It's just about like the way economics really, the way our feelings and economics and money cross over. And they said that he said a bunch of things that people then picked up in the tech press and was like, this is not okay, Uber. They said people are more likely to accept surge pricing if it's 2.1 times the regular price versus 2 times the regular price. And the idea is that if it's
it's not quite 3.
No, the idea is that if it's a number like 2.1, you think that's non-negotiable. So, like, say you're on Craigslist and you're like, I have a couch I want to sell to you for $300.
Right.
You might say, oh, well, would you take $250? Whereas if I said I'm selling you this couch for $299, you would say, well, that sounds very specific. You must really be, attached to that price.
There must be a reason.
And so that was the same thing. People thought, oh, 2.1, there must be an algorithm behind that. Like, I'll take it. Whereas 2, that just sounded like, they're just, they just made up that price.
Right. They knew they needed to do more, so they jumped right up to twice as much, and isn't that convenient? Now, they're still denoting, at least very lightly, they're denoting increased demand when there is, when there would have been surge pricing before. And it's not like the fares aren't going to jump in high demand. It's just you aren't going to notice how much they're jumping. Like, you aren't going to know that, oh, well, they placed a multiplier on there and now I know that I'm paying 3 times as much as I would any other time. You're just going to get your fare.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that's fair.
Yeah, you're going to see the price that you're going to pay. Like, that's great. Yeah. We would all like that. The other thing that they got in trouble for saying was that people are more likely to pay surge pricing when the battery on their phone is low.
Because it's like now or never.
Yeah, yes. And everyone was like, how do they know that? Because, I think this is mostly on iPhones, because you enter into low power mode, and then Uber knows that because, when you're on an iPhone, when you enter into low power mode, all of your apps stop doing some of the things they would do. So Uber would know. And so he was just saying this, like, isn't this interesting that people are more likely to pay more when their battery is low? He wasn't saying that Uber actually knows this and charges people whose batteries are running low more than if your battery isn't running low. But,
sure.
When you say something like that in an interview these days, you can get held in the tech journalism court pretty easily.
But anyone that's running a company that's making as money, and Uber is making insane amounts of money right now, is going to take any data that they have access to and figure out how best to make more money. That's capitalism. That's what you got there. And the idea of this kind of upfront fee, by the way, this is not the first time Uber has played around with this. Uber Pool is their carpooling service that introduced upfront prices prior to this. And I guess it was just such a success there that they started to think, well, maybe we should just kind of roll this out to everything. So there you go.
Well, you are going on vacation next week, Jason.
Yes, I am.
So this next story is for you. Stay vigilant even on vacation. Motherboard reports that a security consultant was vacationing in Vienna when he noticed something suspicious at an ATM. The card reader appeared to have a little bit of glue around the edges, and when the guy gave it a tug, it came off. And if you're watching the video, you can see he just kind of gave it a little bit. You can see the glue there. He gave it a little bit of a yank. And
that looks pretty normal. It's blinking
flashing,
and everything.
You won't believe what happens next.
What happens when he pulls on it? Oh my goodness, there's another one underneath.
So yeah, that's a skimmer designed to steal information off your card. He posted video of it on YouTube that you were watching, and it also shows him saving a nearby tourist. It's funny, you should watch it. He scares her a little bit. I think he almost grabs her card from her hand, which I would not want anyone to do while I was at the ATM. So lots of advice for this. You've probably seen this before. It happens a lot. There's the tourist there. She's very nervous about this.
I know, she's like, I chose the wrong ATM,
also,
obviously.
If you're watching this, you won't be surprised that a lot of the YouTube comments were about the fact that he shot this in vertical video.
Well, of course. Actually, I saw a lot of comments both here and on Reddit and in other places that are wondering how legitimate this actually is.
Yeah, it's a security researcher. They're always trying to promote themselves.
Well, yeah, and in the video, he manages to sneak, his firm or his company in there by name, and but this happens. This absolutely happens. And another mistake he may have made is removing it and not just calling the police, because then at that point, tracking down who actually put it there could become a little bit more difficult to do. Mm-hmm. And apparently, he removed it and then analyzed it later, and then contacted the police, and so he was kind of held to task for that a little bit. But the point is true. Like, this stuff does happen. I guess he mentioned in his article that he always, like, it's a matter of habit when he goes up to an ATM. It's probably a good habit to be in. he always pulls on the thing, on the reader, just to make sure. And he said he's done it hundreds of times. He does it every time, and this is the first time that it actually kind of paid off. Yeah. So I don't doubt that. It's probably a good idea to check that out.
Right. And then you can all, wiggle them, check them to see if they have glue or weird stuff. You can also keep an eye on your statements or use Android Pay or Samsung Pay or that's my advice for you. Or get yourself an iPhone before you go on vacation and use Apple Pay.
I could do that. But I don't have an iPhone, and I have an Android phone. And up until earlier today, using Android Pay was not an option. But now that I have my account back, it's an option again. So we'll see if maybe I'll do that, or I'll just pull on the card reader. I want to get in the habit of that.
The other thing I read in PC Magazine today was that even with the chips, you're not necessarily safe yet because you can still reverse engineer because a lot of the card readers they're not up to date yet, and they know that a lot of people don't have chip cards, so that's not going to save you anytime soon.
Right. There's been a lot of interesting news out of VidCon this week, and it's time to shine a little light on YouTube. No strangers to live streaming. YouTube announced they are finally opening up live streaming to users through the YouTube app. For now, it's hitting select users, but should expand out to others at some point in the future. I guess, it was limited to verified channels, basically, and it could be done through a separate app or through the site with Creator Studio. And I don't know, their approach is definitely a little bit different from what Facebook Live and Periscope is doing. I guess Facebook Live, when it first rolled out, they had kind of like an isolated select few people that they anointed worthy enough to use the service. And that's kind of been what YouTube has been doing too. Like if you're a creator on YouTube of a certain level, then you're welcome to do this. And now it seems like they're going to finally open it up. Are they too late? Is it too little, too late? Or, I mean, at this point, there's just so much of this stuff going on. It makes sense for YouTube to be doing it, obviously, because they're just video. They're not like all the other services that do all these things. And now we've decided to also do video. They're isolated to video, so it makes perfect sense to do it. Yeah,
I think that they're not too late. A lot of people just, when they think video, they still just think YouTube. There's a lot, there's some people who don't want to be on Facebook or don't think of Facebook as a place where they want to look for video or to stream it themselves. And, Twitter, the average person wouldn't think, I think, of Periscope streaming. I have a question for you. There was someone here, I will not name them, who said that their partner... she got a desperate email from her partner who said, I just accidentally uploaded a video to YouTube. And what do I do? How do I get rid of it? And I was like, how do you accidentally upload a video to YouTube? And apparently on Android phones, there's when it's in your pocket, there's just like one button you can press and you can, if you have a video, has that ever happened to you? Like butt uploading?
Buploading? That doesn't quite work, but I'll take it.
Is it very easy to accident? Like if you're in your...
I don't know about that. I mean, you're saying that there's a button on this Android phone that uploads video?
Like if you take a video, it's like super easy to share it. And one of the ways to share is upload it to YouTube.
Well, you still have to go into the share menu and then you have to select it. And I mean... I don't know because I don't upload a whole lot of video to YouTube from my mobile device, so I don't know specifically. But I'm guessing that it's not just as easy as share menu, YouTube, and voila, it's live for everyone. Like there must be an intermediate step in there where you can determine the public nature of it. Is it unlisted? Is it public? Or is it private? Maybe it was uploaded, but it wasn't set to public. I don't know.
I know we didn't talk about question of the day, but I just came up with one.
Oh, excellent.
Have you ever Buploaded? Accidentally uploaded a video to YouTube? Because if you could also accidentally start live streaming, that would be terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Hackers wouldn't have to hack into your camera or microphone to sneak in on you.
So email us at tnt@twit.tv if you've ever Buploaded.
So is it Buploading or is it buttploading? No. Wait a minute. I didn't think this one through before I said it out loud. Never mind.
I don't think anything through before I say it out loud. So I'm there with you.
I seriously thought that there were other alternatives, but obviously it is Buploading, and we'll stay with that. Okay. Real quick, YouTube Red is about to. This is gonna be a hard one to get over. YouTube Red is about to include a big budget scripted TV show called Step Up as part of its exclusive offering to subscribers. Until now, it's been largely filled with content from YouTube stars, but lacking, I would say, in high production value content. But Step Up, of course, is based on the popular series of Step Up dance movies. And there will be 10 45-minute episodes that each cost several $1 million to produce. So high budget stuff here. The goal is to, they say, find a franchise that can be kind of YouTube's House of Cards or Transparent, whatever it is. Yeah, what do you think?
I'd never heard of Step Up. Had you?
I mean, I've heard of it. It's a movie franchise.
Channing Tatum.
Lots of dancing.
Yeah,
I've never watched them, but
I never even heard of it. And I asked my 13-year-old daughter, and she had never heard of it either, which was one of those times when you realize there's so much content out there. You know, it's not the same as it used to be where everyone watched Gilligan's Island. There's so much stuff out there.
The kids are not watching Gilligan's Island anymore, I guarantee.
And yeah, so YouTube Red, they haven't released any numbers yet. I guess we don't really know how they're doing. They said viewership, they have viewership on some shows that rivals similar cable shows. I don't know what that means.
There isn't a whole lot of talk about it, though, but maybe we're just not in the right category to talk about it. You know what I mean? Because I think the content is definitely geared younger versus, you know, something like House of Cards or Transparent, which was kind of what it was being compared to. Definitely different categories, different age brackets for the content in one place versus the other. So, but yeah, I'm very curious to know. Up next, we're going to chat a bit about the Speak Free Act. But first, let's take a minute to thank Atlassian, the sponsor of this episode. Today, nearly anything is possible. And if we can dream it, teams can build it. So how do you bring everyone together to create what's next? You team up with Atlassian. They're the makers of collaboration software that lets teams work and communicate better together. You can do all sorts of things that's going to help your team move through. You can assign, track, and manage tasks for any project, no matter how complex. That's the clarity of Jira. You can create and share content. You can organize results, bring team members all up to speed with the flexibility of Confluence. Instant message or video chat with your team from any device. That is the freedom of HipChat. You can test, review, and manage code in real time. That is the power of Bitbucket. Of course, here at Twit, we love the various Atlassian programs. We use them all. Our engineering team uses Confluence to document equipment and work processes, as well as Jira for managing vendors and organizing our constantly growing pile of tasks, which would be very overwhelming and has been prior to. For everything from planning events to working on serious operational issues, we communicate, all of us together in HipChat rooms, basically. Do a lot of booking, do a lot of kind of management of the site, all that kind of stuff through HipChat. Visit Atlassian.com and see how Jira, Confluence, HipChat, and Bitbucket give your team everything you need to organize, discuss, and complete shared work. Atlassian, helping teams everywhere team up to create what's next. That's Atlassian.com. We thank them for their support. If you don't know what it means to be cyber-slapped, prepare to be learned. Joining us to talk about the anti-SLAPP bill is Sophia Cope, staff attorney at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. How's it going, Sophia?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's very nice to see you here. So let's start off first with what it means to be cyber-slapped. What does it mean?
Sure. Basically, it's what we often see is when someone writes a review on Yelp or posts a blog post or makes a comment on, let's say, at the bottom of a newspaper article, either they're expressing their opinion or they're actually recounting something that actually happened to them when they interacted with a business, let's say, and that business or the business owner sues them often for defamation or for a variety of other civil claims, typically not to actually redress that business's rights or that individual's rights, but really just to harass the person who made the post and really to get them to take down the post, even if it's true or it was a legitimate opinion.
How is it possible to know what their intentions were in that regard when they approach them with this kind of contact?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, basically, like I said, truth is a defense to defamation, as is opinion, particularly when the evidence suggests that what the poster wrote was actually true. and they're getting sued nevertheless. That's usually a good indication that plaintiff is really just trying to shut down that speech as opposed to vindicate their rights. Defamation is, by definition, something that is untrue. Not only does it harm the person's reputation, but it's actually untrue. But if the plaintiff knows that statement was true and they're suing the person anyway, then yeah, that's a pretty good indication that they're just trying to harass the defendant in that case and just get them to retract what they said and to take down the comment.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So tell us a little bit about the protection that's being afforded by the federal anti-SLAPP bill. I believe it's known as HR 2304, the Speak Free Act.
That's right. So actually, just on Wednesday, the House Judiciary Committee had a really great hearing to discuss the bill. There are 4 different witnesses. We hope that they will ultimately vote on the bill, and then they'll send it over to the Senate. But basically what the bill does is that it provides basically a procedural mechanism for people who are sued under these circumstances to get rid of the case very quickly. Normally, as I'm sure many of your viewers know, that lawsuits can drag on for a very long time, and often SLAPP plaintiffs understand that and really they want to drain the resources of the defendant in the hopes that they will just give up and just concede the lawsuit and basically take down the information, take down the post. So this bill would allow, like I said, would allow SLAPP defendants to get rid of the lawsuits very quickly through a very specific procedural mechanism.
So I know California has an anti-SLAPP law and some other states do. Are they effective right now, the state-by-state laws?
They actually are very effective, but the problem is that they're only effective in state courts in those states, and they're about a little more than half the states have state anti-SLAPP laws. And so, yes, they're very effective. If someone is sued in, let's say, California state court, then they can invoke, and they think it's a SLAPP suit, they can invoke the procedural mechanism in the California anti-SLAPP law and hopefully prevail. Of course, the judge still has to rule on the motion. But for all the states that don't have anti-SLAPP laws, SLAPP defendants are out of luck. And then, of course, in federal court, there is no anti-SLAPP law that applies federally. And so this bill would not only apply to these harassing lawsuits in federal court, it would also allow SLAPP defendants who are in states without state anti-SLAPP laws to send their cases over to federal court to invoke the federal law and its protections.
Is this pretty much isolated to free speech on the web, or is it even broader than that?
Well, given that the internet is obviously very popular and review sites are popular, blogs are popular, et cetera, we are seeing more and more SLAPP suits being related to the internet. But SLAPP suits can really can come up sort of in any circumstance. And the state anti-SLAPP laws, if they're good, really apply across the board, regardless of where the speech was ultimately published or how it was distributed.
Good.
So the internet, I mean, is more fluid. Like there are, comments, there's blogs, there's, what's the difference between a blog and, a newspaper? Would something like this have helped in the Gawker suit? Would something like this have helped help in any way with that or not? Is that not something that would have, is that not the same thing?
Well, I'd have to frankly go back and double check the specific claims, but yeah, I mean, potentially, right? It's my understanding that if there was a claim that some information that was released around that video was false or whatever harmed his reputation potentially, but my understanding is that was just more of a privacy suit, and that the fact that this video was released, and so you can't really fight the fact that this video was released. So I don't know. It's tough to say.
I guess my question was, there's a lot of talk on Twitter afterwards saying, like, this is a really bad sign. Like, that someone, I guess Peter Thiel could bring this lawsuit and have so much money behind it just because someone said something about him. And then that was like a slippery slope. I guess I'm asking, is there a connection between the SLAPP laws and what someone like Peter Thiel could do, bringing this lawsuit against Gawker because he didn't like what they said about him?
No, that's actually a really great question. Yeah, so sort of regardless of whether or not this bill would have helped Gawker, there is definitely there are some serious implications about people with deep pockets funding lawsuits that are effectively retaliation lawsuits. Now, if they're lawsuits that are actually legitimate, then they can go forward. But the point of the anti-SLAPP laws is to get rid of lawsuits that are meritless. And someone that's in a jurisdiction without an anti-SLAPP law, even if the plaintiff's case is meritless, it can still take a long time for that to come out in court. And so someone who is backing the plaintiff who has very deep pockets, they can just, like I said, drain the resources of the defendant, even if that lawsuit is meritless. And so, yes, having these deep pockets, fund these harassing lawsuits, it's very problematic for free speech because, like I said, ultimately, it can take a very long time even to get rid of a meritless lawsuit. And the point of the anti-SLAPP laws is to use a procedural mechanism in court to get rid of them as soon as possible. So that way the defendant's resources aren't drained.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, it probably Peter Thiel knew about the anti-SLAPP lawsuits and then couldn't, one could say that's why he goes around and, and brings what he felt was a case that had merit, paid for a case that had more merit.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So obviously the hearing was held a couple of days ago. Where do we stand now? Like, what's the next step here?
Well, the next step is that hopefully the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee will hold what's called a markup, basically a vote on the bill, and it would also potentially be up for amendment in committee, hopefully to make it better and not make it worse, which often happens in Congress, unfortunately. But once the markup happens and the House Judiciary Committee passes the bill out of committee, then the House would hopefully pass it, and then it would go on to the Senate. And then ideally the Senate would pass it and the president would sign it. But unfortunately, we are about 3/4 of the way through the 114th Congress, and we have an election coming up. So they could act quickly if they wanted to, but there aren't that many more legislative calendar days, legislative days on the calendar. So it's a tight timeline between now and the end of the year. But it's possible. But, frankly, if it doesn't pass this year, we think that there's enough momentum that it could be reintroduced next year, and then they would have a full 2 years to consider it again.
Excellent. All right. Well, Sophia Cope, thank you so much for coming on today to talk to us about this. Really appreciate it. Tell people where they can kind of follow the work you're doing online. Sure.
Just go to EFF.org. Very easy.
Yeah.
Oh, and I see you have my Twitter account too. So yeah, at Scope Aesthetic.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you again, Sophia. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
We have some feedback. Jim writes, this is in relation to our question where we went on our own little thought journey yesterday about whether cars could have ethics and who would they protect in that case. So Jim wrote, cars have always been designed to protect the driver. It's how we operate now. People look out for their own safety. There's the assumption that self-driving cars are so much safer and aware of surroundings that a car with that level of awareness will never have to choose. Either it will avoid the situation or no avoidance would have been possible. A choice in the argument is not really a choice because the decision was never a choice to begin with. Self-driving cars are really important subjects to me since I am unable to drive due to a disability and look forward to the day I can regain a large part of my independence. So Jim makes a really great point that this is the way cars work now, in a way, and it's true that when you think about it, self-driving cars will overall be safer. I mean, when we talk about the trolley problem, like we talked about yesterday, like who do you hit, this pedestrian or that pedestrian? Those are so that's not going to happen. Those are so few. That part is so small as to how many lives will actually be saved just by having self-driving cars. So, we have to bring this up because it is something that's interesting that these kinds of things are going to be programmed into the car. But at the same time, when you look at the overall picture, it's going to save many more lives.
I suppose. I don't know if that makes it any easier to, yes, you're right. Probably in the long run, it's going to, net save more lives, but still, there's this very specific example that people are probably going to be at least somewhat aware of when it comes to, time for them to choose what, in what vehicle they're driving or what vehicle they buy and everything like that. And like we were saying yesterday, like right now, that's not necessarily a consideration anybody has in advance. We accept the fact that that's something that happens in the moment, and those decisions are made then, and we possibly will never have to worry about it if we can avoid that scenario our entire lives, And in this situation, everybody has to consider it, at least to a certain degree.
But I mean, there's so many things we don't consider. It's very dangerous to get in a car, way dangerous than so many things that we think about as dangerous. Flying, those things, but we don't think about it because we need to use our cars, and so we just forget. It's cognitive dissonance. We're like, I don't want to think about those statistics because they don't make me feel good.
Right. Yep, fair enough.
After the break, Sam Machkovech is here to tell us how to use VR without throwing up. And we will also talk about how MIT is teaching robots how to read social cues. Ugh. But first, let's take a minute to thank Tracker, the sponsor of this episode. Tracker is a coin-sized device that locates misplaced keys, wallets, computers, even your pet in seconds. We talked to the folks at Tracker, and they are so passionate about this product. They've done more than 5 years of R&D, and they've integrated thousands of customer feature suggestions. They've done 5 product revisions. They really want this little device to work because they know how annoying it is to lose things, and it does work. And we crowdsource so much to make our lives easier. There's no reason why we can't crowdsource this really annoying thing, which is losing our stuff all the time. The Tracker Bravo is constructed with anodized aluminum for the thinnest and most durable tracking. I have one on my keychain, and it is definitely by far the nicest thing on my keychain. Tracker is enabled by Bluetooth Low Energy, so the battery lasts up to 1 year. You can also purchase a water-resistant case if you want to put it on your pet collar. Pair Tracker to your iOS or Android device, attach it to anything via key loop or adhesive, and find its precise location with a tap of a button. Customize two-way separation alerts to receive notifications before you leave your item behind. If you lose your phone, press the button on the Tracker, and your phone rings even when it's on silent. With over 1.5 million devices, Tracker has the largest crowd GPS network in the world, so your lost item shows up on a map even if it's miles away. Tracker recently introduced Tracker Atlas, which works with your Tracker Bravo or your third-party Bluetooth tracker to pinpoint your items on a customizable floor plan of your home. Go to thetracker.com and never lose your possessions again. Plus, just for our audience, just for you, if you enter promo code TNT, you will get 30% off your entire order. That's TheTracker.com, promo code TNT for 30% off your entire Tracker order. So there is an update to the DRM battle on Oculus that we reported last month. Joining us to talk about the newest developments in headset-specific DRM is Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
It's going well. So fill us in on the first few chapters of the cat and mouse battle. I know we talked about it, but maybe people weren't watching that episode. So just give us a little catch up.
Sure. So virtual reality is still in early days, but you can buy really nice sets for very expensive computers for your home. And the two main ones, the one people mostly know about is Oculus Rift. Facebook bought them for a lot of money. And that's the one where you sit down comfortably in a chair, put on a very comfortable headset, use a controller to pretend you're in another world. And then there's the HTC Vive, which is a similar idea, but kicks it up a notch, lets you walk around a big room and has these little things that track you moving around so you don't bump into walls and hit your cat. So they're similar but different. And people noticed that you could buy games that for the Oculus Rift using the HTC Vive's storefront, which is Steam VR. But you couldn't do the other way around. You couldn't go through the Oculus store and buy stuff that worked on the HTC Vive. Some enterprising, I wouldn't say hackers, but definitely fans and enthusiasts figured out that they're essentially both doing the same thing with headset data. So if you're in a virtual world in one, it's sort of just reading you where you move around in virtual space in the same way, did some redirecting and made it so that you could take Oculus games and run them on the Vive just with a little patch. It was incredibly easy to do. When that news broke, Oculus didn't have much to say. They said, we don't approve unauthorized hacks, but didn't go much further. And then they quietly went and removed the ability for this patch to work. They removed the ability for you as a Vive owner to play those Oculus games smoothly. It would say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't own the Oculus headset, and so we're going to consider that DRM. Well, users cried foul, and we at Ars Technica actually were at E3 recently and spoke to some executives, and they made it clear that they thought that this sort of patch done on a whole-scale, highly public level to be downloaded by anybody, they thought that was too far, that you as an enterprising user could hack your own stuff for your own personal use, but being able to download like that, they said that ruined their ability to fund exciting new ventures. And that was sort of their explanation for why it was that they needed you to not only buy their software, but also buy their hardware to use their software. They've turned tail on that. Now Oculus has come out after the fact. They've confirmed what was just discovered as a quiet introduction. They quietly said, here, you can put that hack back in. The hack started working again. The man who made the hack, who still hasn't identified himself, he's still been this anonymous patching guy, has come out and said, hey, it works. Go ahead and use it. And because of that, the patch, it was known as Revive. It's still known as Revive. It had been using a DRM blocker. It had actually been going over Oculus's DRM. So essentially, it was kind of the first step to piracy. Well, Revive removed that because Revive's creators said they don't want piracy. They just want it where if you buy any headset, that you can play any VR game. So that cat and mouse has ended with Oculus coming out and saying, you know what, we're not gonna remove that ability from Revive now, and we're not gonna remove that from Revive in the future. So from here on out, if you own an HTC Vive, you can play Oculus games, and Oculus owners can still play some of these Vive games. They don't work quite as well because you need your hands for some of the Vive stuff, but it's a really, in my opinion, a really good first step towards something like VR to have a little bit more traction. I will say, I only at my home office, I only have the HTC Vive, and it's really nice to be able to go to the Oculus storefront, pay perfectly good money to developers for their games, and play them on the headset of my choice. You know, that to me, I think is a much smarter move that's going to keep more people paying both companies for VR and keep those VR people happy. Because gosh, if you spend $600 to $800 for a headset and $800 to $1,200 for a compatible computer, the last thing you need is any more roadblocks. You're already kind of in. You're already kind of a freak. So don't take that customer off.
So the founder of Oculus, Palmer Luckey, he has said several times that he wouldn't put DRM on it. That he wanted a more open landscape for VR. Why do you think they changed, or do you think that maybe this wasn't a decision that he made? The first decision wasn't one that he made. Why do you think they had the change of heart?
I honestly think Oculus is concerned about keeping its system special. There's some corporate belief that you need our headset. You need to buy into our whole ecosystem. Please be Oculus, Oculus, Oculus. And I know that they're trying to push this with their new hand controllers. So like the Vive, they're coming out with their own thing called Oculus Touch. It's coming out this fall. We don't know exactly when. And it's got a slightly different set of buttons, slightly different functionality than the Vive's hand wands. And I think that's where you're going to see Oculus come out and say, well, we finally have something that will only work with our system. So if you don't buy ours, too bad. So as of right now, they don't have that. The Vive is the Oculus Plus, as far as I'm concerned. The Vive gives you what the Oculus can do and a little more. And so it's sort of foolish for them to even try and trick anybody into thinking otherwise, because the people who are paying this much are savvy. No one is throwing these thousands of bucks at virtual reality, at these things with all of these cables and all of these restrictions, and haven't done their homework. They know the differences between a GTX 970 and GTX 980 Ti, for crying out loud. They're not about to be fooled by some corporate speak about the current Oculus Rift headset doing something magical. It's a nicely made headset, but it's got its limits. Once this touch controller comes out, I think we're going to have a lot more hands-on time to say, which is better, which can do certain things that the other can't. Right now, the Vive has the lead. Will Oculus take the lead after that? I don't know. But they need to put themselves in better graces for the people who are buying this stuff and who may soon buy this stuff, because who knows how long this sort of closed eyes, bulky cord virtual reality industry is going to last. That may be done in a year and a half once things like the HoloLens, which leave your vision open but still offer this cool virtual reality system, take over. So it really behooves them to keep as many people in good graces as possible while this thing seems like it might make money, because who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
I was just going to say, I never know with VR whether to compare what we have right now to console gaming or to PC gaming, because it requires a PC, but it really feels like the HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, like they're consoles. I mean, there's no analog to this in the console world, right? Like you could never take a Sega Genesis game and pop it into a Super Nintendo and it would play.
Absolutely, because it's more like a monitor. This is less like a whole system and more just like the screen. And that has been, complaining users have made that really clear, saying that would be like an Acer telling me that I couldn't use a BenQ monitor for a game. That's ridiculous.
Got it.
And these are currently monitors until they add the kind of things that consoles do, which are specific controllers and specific processors and this, like, you need this for this specific game. It's not going to fly. No one's going to buy it. So, and that's what Oculus Touch. Once Oculus Touch is out, we really will get into the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo of they do things slightly differently. One has blast processing and all that kind of mumbo jumbo. That will kick in. But until then, I love my Vive, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, so once the Oculus controllers come out, will you be able to walk around with Oculus, or will... Because right now, that's the difference, right? I mean, the Vive, you walk around, and the Oculus, you sit down and become a couch potato.
That's the thing that we're not 100% sure on. Like, Kyle and I at Ars Technica were lucky to try out some new Oculus Touch stuff at this year's E3. There was one game called The Unspoken that was this battling game. We had to stand in one point. It was designed for us to not walk around, but we could use our hands and spin around with it and feel like we were magicians shooting fire and holding up shields. And I think that's what we're going to get, is we're going to get these sorts of weird games where you can sort of stand in one spot, which is a lot more convenient for your average gaming person. It's really hard to devote an entire room to a thing where you clear out the... I'm looking over at my pit, my virtual reality pit. But not everybody's insane like me. Not everybody goes and puts felt pads under their couch and finds the perfect arrangement. Some people have kids and pets and lives. That's low on their list. So I think that there's going to be some limited stuff where you can turn all the way around and you'll do these sort of button tricks to warp around. Like, I'll look over in the distance, and I warp, and it feels like I've moved around a giant room. I still feel transported. I can do these cool virtual reality things without necessarily walking halfway across the room. I think that's going to become the norm. That's going to become an accepted thing. Even in like augmented reality, people are not going to necessarily have giant spaces to use that. So I do think that the teleporting, something like that, will be smoother and will be just done and iterated until it becomes this sort of natural, it's like using my mouse to go all the way across a web page. I'm going to use this maneuver to go all the way across a virtual space. It'll just be common, like, oh yeah, duh, that's how you do it.
Well, the moving around leads us into our next topic. There's been a lot of talk about nausea. I have been using some test subjects, who happen to be my children, to determine what VR, which makes you sick. They report to me that the HTC Vive is just fine, and the Oculus almost every time makes them feel nauseous. They also just don't like the Oculus as much, but I don't know. That might just be their opinion. But I think it does have to do with the moving around, or so I've been told. So you wrote a piece today about VR and nausea. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this has been something I've been following for some time, because it was in March I got to try out an Oculus exclusive game that Ubisoft is making called Eagle Flight. And I saw the preview video of it. This was first person, pretend to be an eagle and fly around really fast. And I thought, no way, because I am kind of the virtual reality canary in the coal mine at Ars Technica, meaning if I try something will make someone, an average person, nauseous, I will feel that pit in my stomach immediately. I usually just grin and bear it, because this is still one of the best jobs in the world. But I saw that and go, no way. But what was interesting was when I put the headset on and tried it out, and I would go really fast, I'm noticing that I'm not getting sick. And then I noticed my peripheral in my headset, so the things that were being displayed at me had a little bit of black in the corners of my eyes. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I started really pushing the limits, turning really hard, going really fast. And then my view got really blacked out. It became this sort of tunnel vision. And I thought, well, that's interesting that there's sort of a blacking out that's happening dynamically, that as I was flying and racing around, this was happening. Turns out Ubisoft was not the first person to think of this. The U.S. military has a patent on something very similar in its flight simulators that have been used for years. And there were some researchers at Columbia that looked into this and some other studies and said, wait, is there really data behind this? I mean, they've got a patent, but we don't see any proof as to why that's the case. And they put together a test situation with an Oculus, meaning sit down and use a controller. You're not walking around. You're not using a flight stick or something like that. You're using an Xbox pad. And the idea is that normally by default, when you do that in a game where you use a joystick, but your body's staying still and your character feels like it's moving and turning, sickness really hits. So they found that they, because of what they'd seen in this other research, that the turning and forward movement, they had a little formula that they came up with for how to black out the periphery as people did that, and had them go on this little quest in a little town, following these little dots. And as it went along, the view would shrink, and they even tested how to shrink the view. And they got a 100% return rate of people saying they liked it better when their displays blacked out. And in fact, I want to say 80 to 90% of them didn't even notice the blacking out. They were so immersed and they were so comfortable that they just didn't notice this tiny bit on the edge. Because here on the screen we're seeing here on Twit, you see that very clearly. But with a headset on, it's very different the way the screen is up in your face. And so the result was people saying either they didn't notice it, or if they did, they said, this is absolutely how I want to do it. And they had people test either with and without this tweak, either before and after, and just found across the board. It was, 30 people, which is sort of the minimum size you need for a good sample size. But 100% is huge for a study like this. And so it was just really interesting how they revealed not only that they did it, but sort of the specific formula stuff, the way they used it, sort of a blended texture so that the black circle kind of blurred in and came in this not like sharp way, because the comfort is as much about reducing the periphery and keeping your eyeballs focused and your vision focused to reduce nausea, as it is about making sure you don't notice it. Because if you notice this sort of trickery, then that's a distraction and your eyes are looking elsewhere and your equilibrium can go off. So I just thought that was really fascinating. And I can already say that I've done something very similar. It worked for me. And I imagine, unless there's something patent-wise that's going to stop other game makers from doing this, this is going to be a norm. You're going to see this on every Oculus game where you have to sit down with a joystick, because it is so simple. It's such a simple math formula that says, oh, are they turning? Are they moving forward? If this, then that. I mean, what's easier for a computer programmer to do than to throw one extra formula in? That's very low processing on the system. In fact, it reduces the amount of data that's being shown on these displays at a given time, which may make games run even better, because they're very demanding in virtual reality. You have to get a very high frame rate, 90 frames a second blasting in your eye so you don't get sick. So I think this is good news across the board. Unless some sort of jerk goes on a patent spree about this, Ars Technica will be all over that story if so, because we love our jerky computer patent stories. But it seems like good news. It seems very comfortable. I'm into it, and it'll probably make me a lot more into the Oculus Rift world, because like your kids, I do prefer the walk around kind. But if I can sit down and have a good virtual reality game, heck yeah. I love sitting on my butt. It's great.
Well, Sam, it's always a pleasure to frolic through the latest gaming stories with you. Sam.
Frolic, yes, I like it.
Yes, we did some, I would call it frolicking. It was
while still sitting on our butts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Sam is at Ars Technica. You can find all his work there, or at SamRed on Twitter. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. And if you go to Ars Technica right now, I just got back from one of the worst movies I've seen in the past year, Independence Day Resurgence.
Oh, no.
Go to Ars Technica and read what a hot, wet garbage fire that is. Go ahead. That's my... you're so going to be so surprised as my opinion of it after I said that, but I swear there's...
Well, either way, thank you for saving me $60.
Yes. Have a good weekend. Don't see the movie. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.
Oh, today in our robotic overlords watch
Segment.
Yes.
Okay.
Tech Republic says MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, or CSAIL, has released a paper outlining exactly how a deep learning AI system learned how to predict our emotional behaviors. MIT used over 600 hours of unlabeled video on YouTube to apply recognition algorithms on predicted representation to anticipate objects and actions. What does that mean? That's a good question. MIT says this means machine learning absorbed enough video to be able to determine whether two people in a video would hug or kiss or shake hands or high five. I think this is amazing because back in my day, I went on some dates, and a lot of people out there, they don't know that they're not smart enough to know when it's a handshake or a kiss on the cheek or a high five. You, with a high five, you always know it's a high five. So thank you for that.
Of course, we've made it a thing that we do, so it's easy to know that. We've machine learned ourselves.
We have, yeah. So, another way that robots are becoming more human.
It turns out when you take an artificial intelligence system and you target it at something, it learns. Mm-hmm. That's all I got. So what do we do with this, though? I mean, so is this so that once we actually have robots operating with AI, they know that you're reaching out for a handshake, and they go, oh, well, there you go.
Well, I mean, I think what they were talking about using it for would be if someone seems to not be acting normal, it might know.
Okay.
That in general, we as people are not so good at recognizing when something's off about something.
Okay.
And so like maybe a robot could do that better.
A robot could be our therapist.
I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're going on a date with a robot, the robot would know whether you wanted to give the robot a kiss goodnight or just a handshake.
And let's just say that might sound weird, but it's going to happen. It's totally going to happen somewhere in the future. You all know it. You just don't want to admit it, but that's totally going to happen. What a weird world we're about to live in.
We're going there. We're headed straight there. And
well, we aren't, but somebody is. Somebody's going to do that. That's it. I think that's all. That's all we got.
I mean, I could talk about robots forever, but
we'll save it for another show. There will be other strange robot stories for us to discuss. Possibly next week. I won't be here, so you'll have to discuss it without me. But next Monday, you're going to have Georgia Dow from Morrone with you. Georgia's always awesome.
Yes, and I'm very excited. Ashley Squeda is also going to be on. They know each other. They used to work together at iMore, so they're going to talk about gaming, and I'm going to watch.
And you're going to react. Excellent. Well, TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us, tnt@twit.tv. You can leave us a short voicemail. That's 260-TNT-SHOW. And you can find us on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV.
You can subscribe to the show at twit.tv/TNT. Have you subscribed yet?
Have you?
If you don't think that you have enough time to watch the show every day, you do. Just watch it or listen to it at higher speeds. And if you have extra time, watch it at slower speeds.
Or higher speed and then watch 2 of them.
Or watch it twice.
I don't know. Go back in the catalog and find one and take a trip back in time.
Yes. And if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Megan Morrone.
And I'm at Jason Howell. In some ways, I feel like I'm already on vacation. Thanks to our technical director, Kara Cole, and not Romeo, because I would never do that to you, Mario. I would never do that. Really sorry that I did that. I still feel awful about it for all the text on the screen. And thanks to you for talking tech with us, Megan and the gang. We'll see you on Monday. Bye, everyone.